Go outside every single day, ideally multiple times a day if possible. If the weather permits, you can have your child go barefoot and they're going to get a lot of grounding through the earth. But going outside is one of the best things you can do for your sensory seeking child because they're going to get fresh air. They're going to run and jump and climb, which are all the things their body needs and all the things their nervous system needs to feel more regulated. And if you can go on the playground or go play basketball or go on a hike in a new spot, you're also going to build connection with your child in these moments as well.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and this is All Things Sensory by Harkla.
We are both certified occupational therapy assistants, and together with Harkla, we are on a mission to empower parents, therapists, and educators to help raise confident and strong children of all abilities.
On this podcast, we chat about all things sensory, diving into special needs, occupational therapy, parenting, self-care, overall health and wellness, and so much more.
We are here to provide raw, honest, and fun strategies, ideas, and information for parents, therapists, and educators, as well as other professionals to implement into daily life.
Thank you so much for joining us. Really quick, we want to interrupt this video to let you know that our Harkla Sensory Dice just launched and they're ready for you to check out.
We are so excited about these because they make adding sensory breaks and sensory diet activities into your daily routine so much easier and so much fun.
Yes, so there's 3 different colors. The blue are calming, regulating activities. The green are more focus-based activities. And the orange are more alerting-based activities. So you can mix and match. You can use the one that your child or your client needs in the moment. You can set it up as an obstacle course, however you want to use them. There's so many ways.
If you want to grab some, click the link below and enjoy.
Hey there, welcome back to All Things Sensory by Harkla. We're happy to have you. Welcome if this is your first podcast ever. We're so thrilled that you've joined us today. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica. Today we're going to give you 5 tips for sensory seekers.
Now, this was an episode, which one was this? Number 11 or 14 from the very beginning?
From a million years ago, we did an episode about sensory seekers.
Back in 2018, when we started this podcast, we talked about sensory seekers. And so we thought it would be helpful to have kind of a refresher on sensory seekers and some activities that you can do to support your child who is sensory seeking, or if you're just like not sure, give you a little rundown on what sensory seeking is and why it's important to be aware of it.
Yeah, so we often say that a child is a sensory seeker when they need more sensory input than they're currently receiving, and their sensory seeking behaviors or tendencies are negatively impacting their ability to get through their day. Now, this is different than a child with ADHD, because we often talk about children with ADHD who can't sit still, can't focus. Sensory seekers are different because this is really related to their sensory processing abilities, not their executive function skills.
Yeah, which is why it's important to break that down and make sure that we are identifying those sensory concerns, because I feel like the sensory seekers are always the ones in school who are getting in trouble, they're getting called out, they're the naughty ones, they're the ones who are, being sent to the principal's office because they can't keep their hands to themselves, they can't quiet their voices. And really, I like to help you empathize, because once you understand what it feels like to be in the body of a child who is seeking so much input, it almost makes you understand and empathize how they're feeling a little bit more. So think about, drinking an entire energy drink and chugging it in 10 minutes.
That sounds terrible.
That sounds so good.
Not chugging an energy drink.
But let's say you're in a challenge and you chug an energy drink and you've got 200 milligrams of caffeine flowing through your blood, and then you have to sit down and record a podcast, or you have to sit down and focus, or
you have to write up a report.
You have to sit still, and your body is like shaking and moving and you just want to get up and run around and like burn off some of the energy, and you just are like, your skin is crawling, you have an itch that you can't scratch, you just have so much bottled up energy from all this caffeine, and there's nothing you can do about it but sit there, because otherwise you'll get in trouble if you don't sit there. That's kind of what it feels like to be a sensory seeker, specifically like a vestibular probe seeker, someone who's wanting to move and groove and wiggle and push and pull. And those needs are really difficult to meet, specifically at school.
Yeah. And you can be a sensory seeker in any of the different senses, sensory systems, vestibular, proprioception, like Rachel said, tactile, a child who is touching everything, auditory, maybe a child who seeks out loud noises. They turn the volume up very loud. Maybe they're making noises of their own throughout the day. Visual sensory seekers, they like to look at things that move, that spin. They like to look at different colored lights. And again, these are all examples that maybe you notice these things in yourself or your child, but it's not really impacting your day. Like, it's not preventing you from doing the things you want or need to do. That's more of a sensory quirk, right? This comes into play, the sensory seeking challenges come into play when it really impacts your ability to get through your day, prevents you from doing the things you want to do or need to do to get through your day. That's when we want to intervene and provide strategies, which is what we're going to do today. But sometimes we get questions where I always explain to the person asking the question, like, if the thing your child is doing is not negatively impacting their day, we might not need to worry about it. We might need to just let them go ahead and keep doing what they're doing. You can talk to them about it and explain it and, do different things and try different things. But if it's not negatively impacting their day, me as a therapist, I'm not concerned.
Yeah. So like, we'll use the example of oral seeking. Jessica's son, Logan, he's a bit of an oral seeker. He's always chewing 5 pieces of bubble gum, and he's able to focus and go about his day. But if he was chewing on his shirt, on his pencil, on his zipper, on everything,
which he does do sometimes.
Yeah, and he's unable to focus if he's not chewing on something, or he's ruining his clothes every day. That's more of an example of when it's negatively impacting their ability to get through their daily routine. So
and we want to intervene. Yeah.
We would intervene. We'd provide appropriate things that they can chew on to meet those needs. We'd provide some different sensory diet activities that they can do to help kind of organize the nervous system, because really the nervous system is dysregulated and those messages aren't connecting. There's a traffic jam in your nervous system where you really aren't going from point A to point B smoothly with these messages. And so that's where we get these sensory processing challenges.
Mm-hmm. So if you are a therapist working in the clinic, if you are a parent with a sensory seeking child, then these next 5 tips are going to be helpful for you to do at home, in the clinic setting, and hopefully will benefit your child and help them to feel better in their body.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the first one is to provide their preferred or the input that they're seeking, provide it consistently on a regular basis. So let's say they are, let's use the oral seeker, for example, since we're already talking about that. If you have a child who's seeking oral motor input, they're chewing on everything, they're maybe eating non-edible items or chewing on non-edible items.
Well, if they're eating and ingesting non-edible, we need to look at pica, get blood work done.
Yes, but if they're just chewing on things to meet that need, maybe they're seeking that proprioceptive input, the tactile, the oral input, we're going to provide more of that input throughout the day. So we can do that by providing like sensory snacks, like carrots or celery or crunchy foods or jerky or meat sticks or fruit leathers. Think about crunchy resistive snacks. Think about drinking a smoothie through a straw. Think about giving them more input through the food that they're already eating. Or if you can tailor some of their snacks throughout the day to provide them more input, that's sometimes a good place to start for an oral seeker.
You're also going to want to provide oral input in other ways outside of mealtime, like a chew tube item. If they're chewing their pencils apart at school, using a pencil topper from Arc Therapeutic. Oral motor activity activities are really great to do throughout the day, maybe in the morning before they go to school, when they get home from school, and then before bed, you do Bubble Mountain, you have cotton ball or pom-pom races where you're blowing the pom-pom through a straw to a target, or maybe you do pom-pom hockey where you're blowing the pom-pom across the table, trying to get it into the other person's goal. Any of those blowing or sucking activities are going to really give them that input that they're seeking.
I do have one more that I was thinking about. I found this like kazoo type whistle. It's not really a kazoo. It's more of like the game where you blow the little whistle and the ball floats in the air.
I love that one.
Which is great, but sometimes it's too challenging. So I found one called Weeby Calm.
Weeby?
W-E-B-E, Weeby,
Okay.
and then Calm, K-A-L-M. So
that's
Weeby
clever.
Calm. And but it's great because you blow through the little whistle and then the little ball floats up to the top, but it's in a contained.
So the ball doesn't get lost.
So they have to blow and like sustain that breath, which is great proprioceptive input. Deep breathing as well. So they blow and they hold, and then that ball goes up, and then the ball falls down when they're out of breath. So adding something like that in, the talk tools, whistle kit, or the horn hierarchy is another good one for more of that like oral, like proprioceptive chest input. Kazoos also are good.
So those are just examples for a child who's oral seeking. We do have other podcast episodes and YouTube videos with activity ideas for all of the senses. So if your child's seeking vestibular input or tactile input, we do have activity ideas on other podcasts and YouTube videos as well.
Yes. Number 2, you want to make sure that you're including full body heavy work into the daily routine as well. So that can be part of the sensory diet too. So they are crawling, they are jumping, they are going through a tunnel, they're climbing under crash pads or cushions. They are, picking up and carrying a medicine ball or a heavy laundry bin. They're pushing it across the floor. You're including those full body heavy work activities into their daily routine.
Yep, this is going to help with nervous system regulation because, like Rachel mentioned earlier, a sensory seeker, their nervous system is dysregulated, which is why they're seeking out more input. So heavy work, proprioception helps to regulate the nervous system. And you can incorporate this with their preferred sensory activities as well. So maybe they're doing their preferred sensory activity to help meet their sensory needs and follow it up with a full body heavy work activity.
Yep. And then you want to include those sensory snacks. So including, like we mentioned already, some of those different textured foods. You can include different temperatured foods as well as how you're eating the food as well. So we talked a little bit about blowing a cotton ball or Bubble Mountain. You can also suck through a straw and hold a food item and then transfer it to another bowl and then eat it, right? So instead of blowing, you're like sucking and holding it on the straw, moving it, and then eating it. So just another way to be kind of silly and get some more input when you're eating foods, but just changing more the flavor of the food, more sour, more sweet, more bitter, more spicy. Some sensory seekers love spicy foods.
Yeah. I have found that the majority of sensory seekers I've worked with love sour spray.
Yes.
So that's a good one to add as well. But really the goal here is, even if your sensory seeker doesn't seek out oral motor input, maybe they seek out vestibular and proprioceptive input, changing their sensory snacks and their food to add more resistive, crunchy, different temperatured foods is going to help meet those different sensory needs just in a different way.
Yes. Okay, the next tip is to add some sort of an emotional intelligence program into your daily routine. So whether it is the zones of regulation, whether it's the sensory emotions from our sensory diet course, the Superflex Kids, or the Superflex curriculum, the alert program, there's a variety out there. So pick your favorite, pick the one that is easy for you to understand, easy for your child to understand, and start connecting those sensory seeking feelings with the emotions as well. And make sure that the child knows they're not a bad kid. They're not in trouble when they're seeking input. It's like, no, my body feels this way, so I'm going to try adding this activity or this sensory input, and then we're going to see how I feel afterwards. So you're really communicating with the feelings and the emotions with that connection of the sensory system.
And then our final tip is to go outside every single day, ideally multiple times a day if possible. If the weather permits, you can have your child go barefoot and they're going to get a lot of grounding through the earth. But going outside is one of the best things you can do for your sensory seeking child because they're going to get fresh air. They're going to run and jump and climb, which are all the things their body needs and all the things their nervous system needs to feel more regulated. And if you can go on the playground or go play basketball or go on a hike in a new spot, you're also going to build connection with your child in these moments as well. So aim to go outside at least once a day with your sensory seeking child, but multiple times if possible.
Read the book Balanced and Barefoot and then come back to us and tell us your thoughts.
Well, you'll just know then.
Yeah. It's a great book. We took the course years ago.
It was one of the first courses I think we took.
Well, I mean, we traveled to go to it in person, which was great.
It was super
and it was
fun.
very hands-on. It was very fun. So that's a great book to read, a great course to take if you're looking for more resources on just the beautiful thing about being outside. If you don't want to take our word for it, then you can read that book and then you'll really understand where we're coming from.
Now, if you have a child who's a sensory seeker, if you're a therapist working with sensory seeking children, we do have a full digital course that's just for this specific area of helping children who are sensory seekers and sensory avoiders, really just any child who needs more help in meeting their sensory needs. It's our Sensory Diet digital course, and it really dives into the background information on sensory processing disorder and how it can affect our daily life. And then we go into a variety of sensory strategies, sensory tools, sensory activities for each of the 8 sensory systems. And we teach you how to use all of that to create personalized sensory diets for specific children.
If you are a practitioner and you're looking for continuing education, it is 5.5 hours of AOTA CEUs that are included. And if you are a therapist and you purchase the AOTA version, you do get the workbook that's included as well. Or if you buy the course and you didn't buy the CEUs, you can always buy the book separately as well. But right now they are connected. So you need the course in order to have the workbook because the workbook basically supplements the course, and it's a really great resource. Everything from the course is in the workbook, all the handouts, all of the activities. It's just kind of like it's just like the Bible of sensory processing, you know?
Yeah.
We've got the Bible of primitive reflexes, we've got the Bible of sensory processing, and we just make it so easy to understand and easy to implement. I think that's Jessica and I's love language, is to make this information fun and easy to understand, fun to learn about. I hope you feel that way at least, because I have fun teaching about it and making it fun.
Other people who are in the course let us know that it's great.
Yeah.
So
take their word for it. Not mine.
Take their word for it.
So yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Oh, that'll be linked in the show notes of this podcast episode if you're interested in learning more.
And if you thought this podcast was helpful, if you learned something that you're going to implement with your sensory seeker, leave us a review and take a screenshot of you listening, or take a screenshot or take a picture of your child doing some of these activities and tag us on Instagram at All Things Sensory Podcast. We'd love to see that you're listening and trying these activities as well.
Yep. All right. With that, we'll be back with another podcast next week.
Okay, bye. Thank you so much for listening to All Things Sensory by Harkla.
If you want more information on anything mentioned in the show, head over to harkla.co/podcast to get the show notes.
If you have any follow-up questions, the best place to ask those is in the comments on the show notes, or message us on our Instagram account, which is at Harkla_family or at All Things Sensory Podcast. If you just search Harkla, you'll find us there.
Like we mentioned before, our podcast listeners get 10% off their first order at Harkla. Whether it's for one of our digital courses or one of our sensory swings, the discount code SENSORY will get you 10% off. That's SENSORY.
Head to harkla.co/sensory to use that discount code right now.
We are so excited to work together to help create confident kids all over the world. While we make every effort to share correct information, we're still learning.
We will double check all of our facts, but realize that medicine is a constantly changing science and art.
One doctor or therapist may have a different way of doing things from another.
We are simply presenting our views and opinions on how to address common sensory challenges, health-related difficulties, and what we have found to be beneficial that will be as evidence-based as possible.
By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical condition in either yourself or your child.
Consult your child's pediatrician or therapist for any medical issues that he or she may be having.
This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast.
Thanks so much for listening.